Wargaming have finally introduced rocket launching vehicles into World of Tanks, and this is not the Cold War variant. This is actually a tier 6 M4 Sherman that has rocket tubes, rocket tubes in World War II, and it's part of the new season, or at least with the new season's launch they've introduced this vehicle as part of the 6 season long challenges that we've been having to complete, which feature the fact that you need to have completed 5 out of the 6 of the previous season passes to be able to actually pick up this tank for free. You can of course pick it up in the store if you haven't already, and that will be discounted depending on how many seasons that you've completed. 5 seasons gives you a 100% discount and the tank will have already been credited to your account. If you haven't done that, then you've only completed say 4, you will see that the tank is available for 80% off in the store, so you'll be able to pick it up if you haven't already got it, and or you didn't manage to complete all of the seasons. Obviously, this being a tier 6 vehicle, it isn't a very expensive premium to start off with, so an 80% discount makes it very, very achievable for most people. And of course, I mean, depending on how much you want a rocket launching tank, then yeah, it just depends whether you think it's any good. Now, there are a few problems that I feel like this tank has, and I want to talk to you guys about it because it is at the end of the day a new feature that Wargaming have ever done in World War II, and it's one of those things that I don't feel has necessarily worked out as we hoped it would in the game, being a balanced feature, or at least a vehicle that works but isn't like innately broken or can do things like that. Now that thing, or this thing, the Calliope, is definitely one of those things that I feel like has been done poorly, and that's to say that although the standard ammunition of the vehicle is okay, you don't particularly have the best penetration, meaning that your main armament on this vehicle, if you're getting into tier 7 and tier 8 games, it's just not good enough, and 117 pen mean that you are sat firmly in with tier 4 vehicles. To be honest with you, I'm sure that there are tier 4 vehicles that actually have higher penetration than you would see with a lot of these sorts of tanks, or at least not the light tanks that have absolutely no pen. But my point being is that the penetration absolutely sucks, and that means that when you do come into bottom tier games, you are basically a sitting duck because your armor doesn't work, and so you get taken out very, very quickly with this vehicle, and so it is a bit of a problem. And if you were to compare it to something like the Sherman Fury, which is a similar sort of vehicle, this one gets additional standard penetration, has slightly higher damage on its main armament, and it has a little bit more health as well. And with the 117 pen, you can pen other tier 6s, but primarily if you come up against heavy tanks or even some of the more kind of heavily armored medium vehicles at this tier, you are going to struggle. Safe to say any higher tier vehicles you cannot pen with standard ammunition, even if they expose the side of the vehicle, which is a big problem in trying to create a balanced tank. Now, of course, you might be thinking, well, the standard ammunition of this tank is of course not what the tank is all about. It's about having those rocket tubes, but of course, the rocket tubes being made consistently of like high explosive damage because they're rockets is the fact that they don't have the highest penetration, only 65, which puts this in the realms of a vehicle that is only really good against lightly armored vehicles, regardless of if you're using the main armament, because the premium penetration of this tank is only 159, which is not enough to go through the front of any of the tier 8 heavies basically. And if you're coming up against the side of tier 8 heavies, even that can be a problem if they're angling. Of course, if you've got the flat side, then yes, but for the most part, even the side armor, when they're kind of just exposing it, you can't pen it very easily. So yeah, it's one of those that's infuriating to play in some regards, but it can get better because of those rocket launchers. But they are a feature in the game that has been hotly debated as to whether or not that they're going to be kind of balanced, and I feel like these are balanced in the way that you don't necessarily pen very many things because you've only got 65 damage per shell and you've got 6 of them in a magazine. You can take 60 kind of rockets in one game, And although they don't cost a whole lot to actually like buy, basically 350 each, they're not expensive. They are one of those things that are very, very slow, so very difficult to hit. But when they do hit lightly armored vehicles, you can basically remove even the highest of tier vehicle that you can come up against, the tier 8 light tanks, that you can easily take out with one salvo, because 250 damage times 6, you're sat at around 1500 damage. Now, granted, you have to pen them with every single shot, but the fact is that these sorts of tanks have always been the bane of most players within the game. It's the fact that, you know, it's one of those things where they're nerfing basically all of the lightly armored vehicles up against something like this, and making it even better for the heavy vehicles. And yeah, it kind of leads to this playstyle whereby you're basically just hunting down and doing silly things just to pen things with a vehicle like this. And although it's cool, it's fun, stuff like that, the tank is pretty poor in the most regards, because you have to come up against light tanks with the missiles to make them work, and the main armament sucks, so it feels a little bit bad, I would say. It's probably on the average side, which I'm not against. I feel like everything should be balanced. It just seems like they've gone from one extreme in terms of it being extremely good when you fight light vehicles, and extremely terrible as soon as you meet anything with armor, which equates to like average in the middle. But at the same time, you've got such a terrible experience for the most part. And that is what you're going to be seeing for the most part, is not lightly armoured vehicles, things that you can't pen. And yeah, ends up with this situation where it just feels a bit rubbish. So yeah, I mean, you've been seeing the gameplay in the background of this one, in terms of the sort of thing that you can do with the tank. It's not perfect by any means. I really enjoy playing the tank. But in terms of a competitive standpoint, in terms of fun gameplay throughout the entire game, it's not necessarily there. And I wanted to highlight that to you guys, because at the end of the day, this channel is mainly about just the whole of World of Tanks console, just covering everything that we possibly can, and trying to give you as much information for your own decision making as to whether A, you want to purchase this vehicle, or B, if you come up against it, what sort of things you can do against it. And yeah, I mean, we can hop over to what we've actually got as equipment, and take a kind of a cut from the gameplay, I guess, so you guys can see exactly what gameplay equipment we're running the tank with. So we'll do that now. And so equipment wise, we're running it with advanced loader. That's to get up our reload speed as high as possible. We've got advanced optics to spot for our team, since we can't really do anything else when we're using this tank in the higher tier game, so might as well try and spot at least, because it has very, very good spotting potential. 484 meters of view range with this tank, which is crazy for a tier 6 vehicle. And then we're running it with vents as well, just for improved performance and improved damage per minute, because this slightly improves your reload speed, slightly improves a lot of different things about your vehicle. Which is what we've got. I didn't bother with the gun stabilizer, since it is an M4 Sherman and the accuracy is absolutely fine anyway. And with the rockets, they basically go in a straight line, basically 0.47 accuracy. Yes, it could get better, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's a big thing. I think if you're going to miss, you're going to miss anyway. And most of the time, it's about where you've actually fired as to where the opponent's going to be, as to whether or not you're going to hit them. So that's kind of how the rockets travel in a direct straight line. They do not move. You cannot guide them anywhere. They are rockets. They're not missiles. And so, yeah, they're just going to be just straight fired rounds that are very, very slow. And when they do hit a lightly armored vehicle, remove them very quickly. But if they don't, they'll probably deal a little bit of damage from the splash damage. And of course, just destroy modules, because that is really, really fun about all of the HE rounds in the game right now. In terms of speed, 48 kilometers an hour, very, very quick, I guess, to a degree, but the power to weight ratio isn't insane. It's still good. So you can mobilize around the map quite well. The good and interesting thing about the T-34 Calliope or Calliope is that you've got that increased elevation of your vehicle from where you're firing those rockets. So often people can't actually see the tank behind the rockets, if that makes sense. So you can poke out behind a rock, for example, hide your actual tank and just fire the rocket tubes, which I mean isn't particularly too fun. And if you look in here, the rocket tubes themselves are not actually part of the armor. You can't damage the tank via the rocket tubes, at least from my knowledge. I'm pretty sure that they count as basically spaced armor, and so they don't cause a hitbox, which is a big problem because you don't want to get penned in one of these sorts of areas. But equally, now you can hide behind things and fire off rockets willy-nilly against a lot of the opponents without them even being able to do anything back to you. So yeah, fun times. At the same time, very enjoyed this tank. I think it's nice, it's new. Wargaming creating new ideas is a good idea. It's just a shame that this one was kind of a bit too far to the extremes in both being very powerful against certain vehicles and then just absolutely terrible against most vehicles that you'll be playing against. So yeah, I'd be interested to see, at least from your opinion, because this is all just my opinion. I found it a little bit annoying. You can still have brilliant games, but yeah, I'd be interested to see whether you guys have had amazing games in this thing, whether you think it's super OP, whether you think that in tier 6 games it's way too strong, but as soon as you get into tier 8 games it's absolutely dreadful, worse than any other tier 6. I'll be interested because yeah, that main armament really does suck, as well as the fact that the missiles are only really good against vehicles at tier 6 and below. So yeah, an interesting tank. I'm glad Wargaming at least tried something like this, but maybe next time there'll be a bit more of a balance between maybe having higher penetration with the rocket tubes if they ever do it, and slightly less damage. You know, if they maybe have 80 pen and then like 150 damage, something like that, or 120 damage, just yeah, maybe reduce the damage a little bit but make it a bit more consistent, or just give the main armament of the tank the ability to pen things like you would with a standard Fury, but give it just a worse reload because of course you get the rockets. There has to be a disadvantage. You can't just give it extra rockets that something like the Fury has, for example, or the Thunderbolt. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And then yeah, just give it a slightly more penetration. But yeah, even if it was 20-30% worse DPM than the Fury, I think that would be fair because you do get those missiles. Other than that, that's got a brief review of the T-34 Calliope, whatever you want to call it. I'm pretty sure it's Calliope. But at the same time, yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys think of it, whether you think it is a fun vehicle as I do, or whether you think it is absolute garbage, should never be used, or is absolutely the best thing that you've ever played in the game. I'm very interested to see what you guys think. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like the video, and if you want to see some more, there'll be plenty more videos coming out this year as we move towards 2025, which is crazy. But at the same time, thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.